All right, welcome back, everybody, and thank you for joining me again. All the feedback has been lovely and amazing. This started off with just me showing a vintage story tour of the base to people on Reddit who had some interest and wanted to see it. And now I've got all kinds of cool people saying all kinds of cool things, and I just think that's neat. So thank you all. I'm going to try not to ramble too much. I'm also going to try not to be so boring. It does seem that despite my own self degradation, you guys are actually pretty cool with me running my mouth on here. So I'm going to stick with giving the voiceovers, especially when it comes to stuff like the video you're about to watch, where I try to explain what I did and why I did it. I hope you guys find that kind of stuff helpful. Someone had commented and asked to see the charcoal pits in more detail. Not to be pedantic, but technically these would be called charcoal kilns. And I think really the only difference is that a pit just implies that it's a hole in the ground, the same way the pit kiln is a kiln, but it's in a pit. So a little bit of backstory here. These designs are heavily stolen from various RTS games, from like the first Age of Empires all the way up to I think like the newest one I've played is called Farthest Frontier. But I was also a big fan of playing heavily modded Banished back in the day. And I know those of you who have heard me say I don't like mods would be like, what? He plays another game but uses mods but won't do it on Vintage Story? I was young and dumb, and I've learned my lesson. I don't use mods now. Okay? I'm better. Thank you. But those games had, building assets for a charcoal factory or a charcoal kiln or charcoal pits. And most of them had either stones stacked up in this concave, pile, the hollow center, this dome, if you will, or they had um, a mud dome. And so, from my little brief stints, studying history and stuff, I'm pretty sure mankind first started making charcoal by burying wood in the ground and setting it on fire, the way the charcoal pits are represented in the game. And then I guess we got tired of digging stuff up, and so we put them up above ground. I guess maybe because we didn't want to bend over as much, and so we started just piling the wood on the ground and then building mud around it, just taking mud and packing it on, and then setting that on fire. And then we'd have to break the mud away and separate it from the charcoal and filter the charcoal and collect it. I guess maybe that people got tired of breaking it down and building it back up over and over again. So eventually, that dome of where you just have a pile of wood, firewood, covered in mud, just became they replicated the same shape because the easiest way to stack stones up is basically a pyramid. And so to have space in the middle and to make it more structural, it's a rounded pyramid, which is a dome. So they just, instead of using mud and packing it onto the pile of wood, they just built a stone dome, semi-permanent, sometimes permanent structure, and then they'd fill that up with firewood. And so in a lot of RTS games that go through the Stone Age and the Classical era and the Medieval era, you'll see structures like this. Now, even with those low resolution, pixelated, like Age of Empires 2 graphics, they are way more rounded than what I depict here. You can chisel this down as much as you want. I stopped here because I had this issue where if one thing is super chiseled in the world, it'll stick out if the stuff around it is not super chiseled. It's kind of like having a 1080p part of the screen in the middle of a screen that's only running 144p or something. Like it sticks out like a sore thumb to me. Now, if you guys don't have that problem, you're okay with stuff being super detailed in one area and then a little less detailed in another, and that doesn't get in the way of you having fun. By all means, go ham on this sucker or don't touch it at all. You could really just make these as a cube and not whittle it down or have any other spaces cut out, and then it would still function because all a charcoal pit in this game is a 3x3 hole. Now I have this set into the ground a little bit, so that way it's only two from where the ground is. But I find this to be easier than putting any kind of steps up into it or down into it because of the way it detects air blocks. And if there's an air block detected inside the charcoal pit, you'll either get no charcoal because everything burns up, or you'll get diminished produce. So I try to keep it airtight. 3x3 is good. You technically can scale these up as much as you want. Like I think you could have this shape and then cut this hole down all the way down to where it's 11 from the top to the bottom, because I think the cap is 11 by 11 by 11 for charcoal pit detection. And so you can make this more efficient than what I've done. But I just like having the 3, and we'll get to the 4th one here in a second, set up to fill up and just have those run. Now, there's probably more efficient ways to do it, but I try to balance aesthetics and functionality, and this seems to strike a good balance. So 3 of these, 3 by 3 by 3, hurrah, the ants go fucking marching, just seems to cut it. Now, if you need more of these, you could technically make a whole yard full of these things. Or if you want to do it differently, you could set a couple of these up and just have them connect to a much larger underground charcoal pit that you just set off once you have it all filled up. Maybe mentally it's easier on me to fill up these 3 small ones versus having a big 11 by 11 by 11 that I have to fill all the way up before I can light it. This way I can get small amounts of charcoal anytime I need it. I have toyed with the idea of making a much bigger one that is only visible through like some glass. I've seen people do that where you can like actually watch it go. And I've thought about doing that, but I just haven't gotten around to. If I'm going to do it, I've not gotten around to do it, and I haven't really given it too much thought since the idea popped into my mind. But all this is, and you see I've burnt this one, is 3 by 3 by 3 with a hole in the top so you can put the fire on top. Now typically in the game you'll see people dig the 3 by 3 hole, fill it up, and then they'll put dirt blocks on it, and then in that middle space they will put a fire pit and then a dirt block on top of that after they light it, and that's a charcoal pit. This is essentially the same thing. I've just done it in stone and made it above ground because, like I said, I've seen this a lot in RTS games as assets, and also if you look at like paleontology, like diagrams and drawings and artist interpretations, this is what comes up a lot. And I think even in like medieval manuscripts you can see charcoal makers using this type of structure. However, in those manuscripts I can't tell if those are permanent structures or it's just the mud caked around the pile of wood, which would be a neat mechanic to have in this game. But essentially if you take a dirt block and put it around the firewood stack you've made, you're essentially doing that. So 6 to 1, half dozen to another, I guess, to putting it in the ground. But this does have a problem where now you're up above ground, and some people don't want to have to jump up on top or build a ladder. One time I had these set up, excuse me, and I made a little wooden catwalk that you had a ladder and got up on top of it, and it just ran across all 3 of them, and I could just access this to start the fire. Using iron doors is definitely nicer than having to constantly break and replace a dirt block. But you can't get away with using wooden doors. I don't know why anyone would try, but I've seen people start their campfires on slots of peat. So just as a PSA, public safety announcement, don't use wooden doors for this charcoal pit design. It will not work. However, you can occupy these 2 blocks and that top block with rammed earth or packed dirt or even just low fertility soil to easily break them down when you need to. Technically, you can build these charcoal kilns out of any soil or stone block. I think even ceramic. But my problem with the ceramic and with the soil is that when I'm... Maybe not the ceramic, I'm sorry. With the soil blocks is that when I'm digging with the shovel, because that's what you use on the charcoal, I tend to accidentally break a block or 2. And I myself personally just find that super annoying. Why can't I jump out of here? So instead of having these made at a weaker block, I made it a permanent structure with the stones. That way my shovel can't break the blocks. So the only thing I'll be collecting out of here is going to be the charcoal. And then it's just a neat idea. You don't have to have one for each one, but it's a neat idea to have a torch holder with a torch nearby. That way you can easily set these alight and then return the torch. I also went maybe a little above and beyond besides just like chiseling it. Because like I said, you could probably just not chisel this and it'll function, but you could also just put stairs instead of chiseling these down like I have. I just hate that there's no corner stair block in the game. And then these little like curb slabs, which these right here make it easier to place a dirt block on top if you're doing that, but I kept them after I've added the trap doors because it just looks like it's holding the trap door, you know what I mean? And then I got storage in between them to make it look like there's... This gravel was implied to be like charcoal dust and granulates and stuff like that, particles. And then there's actual charcoal blocks here. And then dirty, aged crates to hold firewood and charcoal. I just didn't want to keep a space in between them. And actually, I kind of don't even like this. I might do something different about that even. But this right here just seems the route to go to have some condensed storage. And then we got this little bay over here where it's going to be bulk storage. Right now there's just one crate each. We keep burning through the charcoal and stuff like that, doing other things. But ultimately I'm probably going to take out some of these blocks, move these guys down for aesthetic purposes, and then put crates in the brick wall right there, much akin to how that is. And this will be like the bulk storage. But we also took charcoal and drew on various blocks, which you can't draw on the dirt or the gravel, so that kind of sucks, to make it look grimier. And then you can see I've got the darker bricks, not bricks, blocks of rocks, the rock blocks on the bottom. In my head, the thing closer to the ground and where the charcoal is stored and scraped up and stuff is going to be dirtier than the top. So there's a slight gradient of darker colored up to lighter colored stones in all these. Now you can make them however you want to look, or however you want them to look. You can make them look clean. You can make them all one dark color. Realistically, on the inside at least, I feel like it would all be you know, basalt and shale and slate, just because it'd be a darker tone in here from where all the charcoal and the actual burning is taking place. And then the outside, like where it gets rained on the top, that gunk might wash off and run down and then collect around the base. And you can see we've piled up some powdered charcoal to make it look like there's piles of stuff, which is nice. I just wish that when you piled the piles of stuff, it just made one big pile that occupied the block. Like, I don't like that the charcoal is a square when you stack it up on the ground. Like, I get why they did it. However, I wished it was more like one of these, but like a whole block size. You know what I mean? I think that would be a better way to go about it. But I think this captures like the aesthetic I'm going for, where this place looks dirty and like there's charcoal everywhere, and like if you just come over here, you're gonna look like a coal miner, you know, when you leave. Just soot all over your face. It's black gold, baby. But that's what I've been using. I did construct this. I'm probably gonna take it down and make it back to this style because I do prefer this style. But as I was saying a minute ago, the access in the top, some people don't like that. So when you having to build a ladder, or like when I did the catwalk, which is what I was talking about earlier, people find that annoying, which is why a lot of them do just keep it in the ground, because then you don't have to jump up and do parkour or make stairs or build a ladder and climb up there to fire those. You can just do it running on the ground, and because everything's below ground. And I get that, totally get it. I think this aesthetically works for me. Depending on what kind of vibe you're going for or how much you care about aesthetics, it's entirely up to you what you do. You can just keep rocking a hole in the ground. You can make this a square. You can make it out of, you know, clinker bricks, however you want to do it. However, to solve the issue of, I don't want to have to get on top of my charcoal kiln, I totally get it. I'm also lazy. So, a compromise, and although I don't know how much of this outside you can really chisel, if it's purely about room detection, you could probably chisel quite a bit more than what I've done here and make this a lot smoother and rounder. But this does have a funkier silhouette than the other, like, dome Patrick Star house looking charcoal kilns that I have here. But the advantage of this one is I think you get an extra block or two of space by doing it this way because the ceiling is higher. But also you can access the fire from right here just through these two doors. So you go in here, fill it up, pack it in, let us begin. We start a fire right here, and then we close these doors again. So that's a different way to do it. Always keep a torch holder nearby. Even with this, I don't know, I would want to get on top of this. Something about me, like when I see an object, I don't know if it's the inner monkey, but like something about me is like, oh, I gotta climb that. And so like even though I don't need to be up here as a player, like what if I'm sitting here talking to somebody on Discord? You telling me you're not going to go around and do parkour in this motherfucker? You're not going to get up here? So, I don't know. The gripe about, oh, I have to jump in this platforming game is a little bit weird. Not to dog on y'all. Like, your complaint is valid. Like I said, I'm also lazy. I'm just goofing a little bit. But if you don't like this, this is a different way to do it. But I think by doing mine this way, you lose a lot of the sex appeal. And I always say I want to make these videos short and sweet, but I feel like the 15-minute mark we're approaching here is even too long for the charcoal pits. But if I've shown you enough here and talked about it enough, I hope you kind of get what I'm doing with it. If you want to see a step-by-step build, I can definitely do that. But really, you're just going to build 2x3 walls around a 3x3 cavity, and then you're just going to dome it up on top. And as long as there's no air blocks exposed to the outside, you should be able to chisel that down and make it as round as you want. Like, really, you could put a block right here and then put another one of these right there and chisel that corner and chisel that down, and then it'd be even rounder looking. I just stopped right there because I'm relatively lazy. And like I said, I didn't think I was going to show this to anybody except for that Reddit stuff kind of, taking off and people asking about it, asking for a tour. So if I had known I was going to show people, I might have cleaned up a little bit, chiseled it up some more. But I still think this is sufficient. And I think this works. I think it works, duh. But I think this is sufficient enough in its functionality and its aesthetics for what I'm doing here, like for what I'm going for, and for actually serving a purpose in survival gameplay, which is a balance I strive to strike every time I go bowling, Nico. So I think I've ran my mouth enough again. We're at 16 minutes. Again, thank you guys so much for the feedback and the love and the validation of my hyperfixations. If, like I said before 1,000 times, if there's anything specific that you wish to see, like this charcoal video, somebody requested this. If you want something like this for anything you're seeing in the background or something you've seen in the other tour, let me know, and I'll do the same thing that I've done for this fellow for you. I think next up, though, barring anybody else requesting something specific, I'm going to show off the winery, which there's some pictures of that on Reddit if you want to make your way to the Vintage Story subreddit. It's about the only one I really participate in because I love this game so much. So if you want to go check out some cool builds, people are always posting funny stuff and doing cool builds and things like that on there. So it's a cool way to engage with the Vintage Story community if that's something you want to be a part of. But in the meantime, thank you for coming to my little community here and being a part of it and contributing to it. You guys are all really great. Like I said, the feedback's lovely. The love is lovely. And if there's anything more you want to see, or anything that like you've seen already but I didn't go slow enough, or I didn't talk about it in enough detail, or maybe you just want me to be more specific, like even with these charcoal pits, like if this isn't enough, if you want a step-by-step how to build, I will do that. I just think it's kind of, it's pretty straightforward how to do this. And I'll go around here real quick before I cut the video just so you guys can see. Let me go and fly real quick what this looks like. It's a little jittery. I don't know if that's going to come through on the editing, but it is a little jittery right now. I don't like that so much. But hopefully these flybys, you can pause the video whenever you wish to get some reference pictures. And then, like I said, I don't really care for this one so much. I'm probably going to take this. I did this just to... I want a fourth one, but I did it this way just to show you a different way of doing it, so that way you don't have to keep climbing up. The climbing up doesn't bother me enough to sacrifice the aesthetics. But hopefully this is enough for y'all to see what you need. And if it's not, let me know down in the comments, and I'll make another video. Thank you guys, and have a great day. Happy holidays, Merry Christmas, Hanukkah, Kwanzaa, all that good stuff. Everybody, love you. Love everybody else.